What's going on, guys? K-Pine here and welcome back. And in this video I'll be featuring Primeape in the Ultra League. Now this Pokemon isn't just a meme pick, it's insanely good. With the buff to Karate Chop, it paces to Night Slashes every 8 turns and Close Combats every 10 turns, which is incredible for a Pokemon with as high of an attack stat as it has. I paired it with the Shadow Gator on the Safe Swap and Registeel on the back, where I had 10 straight positive sets with the team. And in this video, I'll be featuring sets 9 and 10, where I happen to go 4 and 1 in both of them. And with that, let's get right into the battles. Alright, getting to the first battle, we lead Primeape into Tentacruel. Terrible lead for the Primeape, so we are going to safe swap into that Shadow Gator right away. And matchups like this, as well as the mirror match, are why we're running Crunch on the Shadow Gator. Allows us to hit it for neutral damage and fish for that debuff, but also to potentially nudge out an opponent just a little bit with that extra damage Crunch has to offer. We do fire off the Crunch before they go for the Scald. We want to take advantage of being able to reset that one turn it takes for us to swap. We do land the Crunch, they land the Scald, and here they give up a shield to the Crunch and they're not going to farm down. I'm going to reach another move in time. And here I did have enough for another Crunch. I didn't quite recognize it in the moment, but I should have. Crunch is 665, so that third Crunch is going to be Hydro Cannon Energy. But fortunately, my opponent does end up shielding that move anyways, so they go down both shields and then end up swapping out to store that energy. And now Primeape is just in a prime position to close out here. Close combat is just not quite gonna KO yet, so I didn't want to debuff myself yet, so instead I went for the Night Slash. My opponent does outpace by a turn before I throw that close combat, so I do give it my second shield. Now I'm gonna load up to 100 energy, and now this Hippowdon is in Night Slash range, so I'm going to go for the Night Slash. If they come in with Tentacruel, I'm going to go for the Close Combat. We get the boost. Honestly, boost doesn't matter there. Close Combat still would have KO'd even though it's resisted. They have a Shadow Donphan in back and they concede, knowing one Close Combat would absolutely annihilate that Donphan. GG's. Next battle, Pangoro Lead. Now, this is kind of an interesting one because during these sets in the second battle, I had a positive lead. My opponent safe swapped into a Shadow Gator, but they were running the wrong boost set on their Gator, so they just instantly top lefted. I mean, like, I've done that plenty of times myself too. You know, you just build your team together, put it, you don't check the move sets, and then you just end up running the wrong one. And, you know, I get it, I understand. But I didn't want to show you guys that battle. I wanted to give you better content. So I replaced that with a different video that had a positive lead into a Shadow Gator safe swap to show you how to play it out, where you just throw that close combat right away. You take advantage of that one turn it takes for them to swap, and that close combat either gets a shield from them or absolutely annihilates the Shadow Gator. And regardless of whether they shield that close combat or not, you're then going to want to pivot into your own Shadow Gator. And here in this matchup, since they are running a Pangoro Lead and I have the Registeel on back, I don't care for switch advantage really. I just cared for that shield advantage, of which with my Registeel, because that Pangoro comes in, I just get to land a Focus Blast and absolutely nuke the Pangoro. Unfortunately, they do survive on 1 HP, so they are able to get a close combat off and force me to give up a shield onto my Primeape. But the reason why I wanted to give up that shield on my Primeape instead of the Registeel is I wanted that Karate Chop energy instead of the Lock-On energy. Here I do go for a close combat. My opponent makes a very nice catch onto their 1 HP Shadow Gator, but it does not matter because with this ultra fast pacing, Primeape is already at close combat number 2, gets a shield from my opponent, and that is just game over. All I need to do is make sure I no shield this move, because if they get the Crunch debuff, I don't want to be taking, which they get the Crunch debuff here, I don't want to take that debuffed Crunch. So now I can give up a shield here. They are running Aqua Tail, doesn't matter, we are going to be able to outpace this move. Focus Blast lands on the Drapion, not quite enough to take it out yet, but we do get a lock on down, and that is a good game. GG's. Next battle, we lead Primeape into Poliwrath. Kind of a neutral matchup here. As you know, we're both dealing for neutral damage with the counters and the Karate Chops. We do have significantly faster pacing, but the opponent has better fast food pressure. So I am going to go for that close combat right before they get to the Icy Wind, and then dip into my Gator to catch that Icy Wind and see what they want to do. From here, they're going to dip into their own for Alligator, And this is, again, another reason why we have that crunch to hit it for neutral damage, as well as fish for that defense drop. Fortunately, no defense drop to be had on that one. We're going to let it go. Now here, we're going to throw the Hydro Cannon right away to potentially win CMP over my opponent. But they smartly overfarm, and now they're going to go for a full Shadow Claw down, but they cannot reach it. Shadow Gator is just too good. Force them to dump some extra energy. Otherwise, they would have had to take another Hydro Cannon of their own. From here, I can bring in my Primeape. We do get denied a Karate Chop there. A little unfortunate, but it's not going to make too much of a difference other than we just take an extra Shadow Claw of damage because they do not reach another move. So down goes the Gator, in comes the Poliwrath, and here, a Night Slash won't quite KO, but I don't want to debuff myself yet, so I do go for the Night Slash bait, and it's successful. I'm also thinking to myself, hey, if they're bringing in the Poly here, then they're weak to this thing in the back. So I go for another Night Slash. I'm thinking I'm in a good spot here, because if they shield that, I'll reach another Night Slash to KO the Poly, but that counter just KOs, just barely KOs, and because they survived to take out my Primeape there, I am in a very tough spot. And in the back, they have a Zygarde. So if I was able to get off that last Night Slash, this would just be a win. But because their Poly was able to debuff my Registeel, so its Focus Blasts are doing less damage, then I don't really have a win condition left. I tried to call a potential crunch there, that they're not running Earthquake, but they are running Earthquake, and seeing that they are running Earthquake and that one more Focus Blast still will not be enough to KO this Zygarde, I do concede. GG's. Next battle, we lead Primeape into Cobalion. Fantastic lead for the Primeape. They will outpace to a Sacred Sword before we reach our close combat, which it looks like they are gonna do. That's perfectly fine. We can let this go. And now we can throw 4 more Karate Chops in the close combat for good timing. But they swap into a Shadow for Alligator. And here we can just load up and play to that CMP tie. Close combat going to do massive damage to that Gator, so it does garner a shield. Now I'm going to give up a shield of my own, bank this energy, and then bring in my own Gator. This way I will be able to keep switch advantage here. Because as you'll see, we can tank this Hydro Cannon, and I can fire off this Crunch right before they reach their second Hydro, and this Crunch will just barely be enough to KO. If I was running Hydro Cannon Ice Beam, Hydro would not be able to survive there, and they would have been able to take out my Gator. So a prime example of where Crunch does come in clutch here in these matchups. So they come back in the Cobalion, tank that Hydro, then come in Clefable. They're gonna have to tank another Hydro, and honestly, that's just game over because I get my Registeel on their Clefable as well as my Primeape for that Cobalion, where it does have a close combat loaded. They go for Moonblast number 1. I'm going to outpace the Zap Cannon. I wanted to get this off as soon as possible because my opponent's only win condition was me not being able to land a Zap Cannon onto the Clefable. But since I am able to land that, my opponent does not really have a win condition left. Because they bring in the Cobalion. I can let this go. I know I'll survive a Sacred Sword. Now I can bring in my Primeape, throw 1 Karate Chop, then the close combat. This will be good night to that Cobalion. And from here, are we going to be able to reach a move? Those Fairy Winds are chunking. Primeape hangs on. It's lightning fast pacing, coming in clutch as we reach another Night Slash. And here we can just Shadow Claw down with our own Gator as we win with a shield still in play. GG's. Next battle, we lead Primeape into Galarian Weezing. Terrible lead. We are going to safe swap into that Gator, and we are going to fire off our Hydro Cannon right away. But my opponent has other plans. They take advantage of that 1-turn swap and fire off their Brutal Swing right away. And now they're going to send in a Malamar. Malamar, another heavily buffed Pokemon from the season, being given the move Psywave, which is an incredible 1-turn move. Now they are going to go for a foul play here. And I know that I'll get to back-to-back Hydros if they go for another foul play. So they are going to be forced to settle for Superpower here. And I'm perfectly fine giving up a shield, right? Because I know that the only way I'm going to win this game is by getting my Primeape away from that Galarian Weezing. So I will give up a shield there. I can't quite get the Shadow Claw farm down, so I am going to go for another Hydro. And my opponent will outpace to another Superpower, but they try and go for the farm down, and Shadow Gator, just so good, hangs on with 1 HP, able to make that Hydro and take switch for my opponent. So now from here, I can bring in my Registeel and I'm in a pretty good spot. Even if they do have Overheat, that's okay, because I would have been able to survive it and get off the Zap Cannon still, which is necessary chip damage. But they let me throw first anyways, which is amazing, because I get the 1/3 chance in the attack drop there. And Zap Cannon was nerfed this season to bringing its attack drop chances down to 33%, which we are fortunate enough to get it there. So we do take that Overheat pretty nicely, which we would have anyways. But they have a Shadow Machamp in the back. Primeape, fun fact, wins CMP over Shadow Machamp, nukes it with that close combat, and is able to hang on to reach yet another close combat to take out the Galarian Weezing, and that's a good game. Next battle, we lead Primeape into yet another Galarian Weezing. So like last time, swapping into that Shadow for Alligator. My opponent overfarms on this one, and lets me get off a Hydro Cannon. I'm not sure if they lagged a little bit or what. It does appear that they lagged since that was a CMP tie by turn, so a little unfortunate, as it does deny them a Fairy Wind, but they're running Sludge. So that's better for my for Alligator that they're not on Brutal Swing. Sludge is an interesting tech, trying to hit the other Fairy type, since there is a rise in Fairy types this season with the buff to Fairy Wind. And now they're going to pivot into their own for Alligator. So I do lane that Crunch, and I'm perfectly fine letting this go, because I can bring in my Primeape and get a very nice Karate Chop down here. I will tank 1 Hydro Cannon. Sorry, I will shield 1 Hydro Cannon, and then I will fire off this Night Slash before they get a chance to fire off their second Hydro. So we're preserving HP onto our Primeape, trying to keep it healthy, and they have a Mana Buzz in back. So it seems like they were ABA weak to the Registeel. I mean, honestly, if their Galarian Weezing is on Overheat, then it's not that bad of a matchup. But G Weezing is just such like a bag of tricks with all potential moves it can learn. And the fact that they're running Sludge kind of cues me in a little bit that they are on Overheat, just because Steel types would be such a bad matchup, and they're building extremely ABA weak to that Registeel then, or Steel types in general. But my opponent stayed in that matchup, which was a little interesting, and then they come in their G Weezing, and so because I'm expecting them to be on Overheat, I do respect this with the shield. They go for a Sludge Bait, and I'm like, oh no. So now they're fairly gonna outpace, get to overfarm quite a bit, and land in Overheat, and then potentially be able to take out my Primeape. But a debuffed Overheat isn't the end of the world, just because my Primeape will be able to get to 2 close combats, and this would be tricky to figuring out if this is close combat range, double close combat range or not. But they're not on Overheat, they're on Play Rough, so they are extremely ABA weak to the Registeel. They settle for a Sludge right there. That's double resisted. It will not be enough. We get to land the Zap Cannon, swap into our Primeape, and get to this Night Slash to take care of the G Weezing. Night Slash lands, and down it goes. GG's. Next battle, we lead Primeape into Skeledirge. Bad lead for us. We are going to swap into our Shadow Gator, and we are kind of ABA weak to the Skeledirge. So it's like, why aren't you staying in there, right? Why are you swapping out for only one good answer to it? Well, if I swap into my Shadow Gator is notoriously good at getting shield advantage. So if my opponent does give up a shield to maintain switch in that position, then that's actually a good matchup for the Primeape, just because of its pacing and the super effective Night Slashes. So I'm swapping to my Shadow Gator with the intention to get a shield advantage in this situation. And if I don't get a shield advantage in this situation, then at least to get a decent energy advantage to leverage that fast, super effective pacing. But we do get that shield advantage, which is exactly what we wanted. Back in comes the Skeledirge, 2 Karate Chops, and then the Night Slash for good timing against a 5-turn user like the Skeledirge with Incinerate, and we get the boost. Honestly, the boost is unnecessary just because all of our damage is coming from Night Slash, and at this range, Night Slash is kind of just going to be enough to KO it. So we do fire off the next Night Slash. It does get a shield from them. They continue to overfarm, perhaps not knowing the Primeape counts. So instead of them being able to force my final shield, I can just take them out, and they have a Registeel on back. So whether they were able to force my final shield or not, that game is over, as my opponent does not want to get boosted close combated and they concede. GG's. Next battle, Tentacruel Lead, swap into that Gator. And the good news about most Tentacruel Leads is that that's their Gator answer. Their backlines tend to be weak to Gator, so it forces them to stay in at least for a little bit and take some damage onto the Tentacruel to potentially put it in close combat range later in the game, as well as, you know, it keeps your Primeape away from it. So they do lane that Scald now, or Acid Spray. Didn't quite see which one it was. Either way, we do know we can survive enough to get to 2 more moves, which my opponent recognizes that. They swap into their Gator to try and catch a Hydro, but we react in time. We're able to land that Crunch. Here, I could have CMP tied with a Night Slash, but Night Slash would not have been enough to KO. So instead, I'm going to shield and overfarm on energy to then throw a Night Slash one before their next Hydro, just in case they shield. I will able to go for the next Night Slash to take out their Gator, which they do. So they shield, and now I can go for the next Night Slash on the CMP tie to take them out. Potentially they didn't know Primeape counts yet, since Primeape is new with Karate Chop, or they weren't quite able to recognize that Primeape has such an extremely high attack stat and wins CMP tie basically over everything, as they play to yet another CMP tie that Primeape does win, gets their final shield with that Night Slash. And here, this is still going to be a little bit of a tricky game, but because I was able to get that final shield, I'm now in a potentially winnable spot that I would not really have been able to otherwise. We come in with the Registeel. We do shield their first move just in case we are lucky enough to get the 1/3 attack drop with the Zap Cannon. So Zap Cannon coming through. This will not be enough to KO. We'll do some nice damage. Unfortunately, we don't get that attack drop, but that's okay. We do swap here to try and make a catch, and if we make that catch, we're just going to win that game. But if we don't make the catch, we get that Shadow Claw damage as well. So that was kind of a win-win situation on that swap there, just because we either get the catch or get that Shadow Claw damage, which is very crucial here, as we can just throw this Focus Blast right away. We don't want the Tentacruel to reach another move, and here this is going to be a race. Can we get the lock on down before they reach a move? We do, and we're able to take that one. GG's. Next battle, Primeape into Venusaur. So this one, we're going to safe swap into a Registeel, and it's kind of a similar situation to that of the Skeledirge Lead and safe swapping into our Shadow Gator. We're not looking to get switch advantage, but rather shield advantage or an energy lead. But this case, instead of the energy lead on our Primeape, we want the energy lead on our Shadow for Alligator. They meet it with a Giratina. We do get the Zap Cannon debuff right off the bat, which is kind of fortunate. But unfortunately, even with that debuff, we're not going to be able to flip switch here. So we are aiming to take an energy lead onto our Shadow Gator instead. So Shadow Sneaks are flying, Zap Cannons are flying. A little bit of a boring matchup here, as it's just 2 tanks going back and forth at each other. So another Zap Cannon going through. This will bring the Giratina altered into the red. Can't quite lock on down here, as they will reach yet another move. So instead of going for that lock on down, I'm going to snipe it with my Shadow Gator here. Throw a couple more lock-ons, snipe it with the Shadow Claw. We get a Shadow Claw energy lead and see what they want to come in with. If it is that Venu, we're kind of in a decent spot just because of how much these Shadow Claws are going to chunk away at it. They do go for the Frenzy Plant. We do give up a shield. We want to at least split up to the Ice Beam, but to potentially force that shield, for they're scared of getting one-shotted by that Ice Beam. We bait with the Hydro Cannon. It does get the shield, and now we're going to give up a second shield of our own, as, like I said, we want to whittle away at the HP of this Venusaur. Now, again, we are baiting with the Hydro. This one my opponent does call, and we can just go for Hydro number 2, as we're at the back-to-back. They're not quite yet at the Frenzy. And if they shield that, then they're at a range where Primeape can deal with it and take it out with a Night Slash. But they let it go and decide to put it all on a 1-shield Zygarde. We reach a last-second Hydro Cannon, which does force their final shield, and now this is going to be a very interesting and close matchup. I bring in my Primeape. My Registeel is extremely close to a move. They can't quite get the Dragon Tail down. We reach the Focus Blast. This will do some very nice chip damage to the Zygarde. We do get denied a Karate Chop on the bring in there. And let's see if that will cost us in this situation, as they do make it to an Earthquake, but we do make it to a Night Slash plus a close combat of our own, as that Night Slash does put it in close combat range. And despite the terrible leads, Primeape is able to flip these matchups. GG's. Next battle. Primeape into Talonflame. Now this is a massive core breaker, and I'm kind of just looking to do the same thing again, like a Skeledirge Lead, trying to utilize energy on, in this instance, probably Registeel here. I do give up a shield. I wasn't sure if a Leaf Blade would one-shot Shadow Gator, just because it's a Shadow for Alligator, taking super effective damage. If it didn't, I probably would have just let that go and hoped that they would have shielded that move to respect a potential Ice Beam. But instead of giving up a shield, building up, getting another shield of their own from the Hydro, I was hoping that throwing on the CMP tie there, that was enough for an Ice Beam. I was hoping I would get a 2-0 or both of their shields there, and then Registeel could sweep, as it would be able to one-shot the Talon. But unfortunately, my opponent calls that I am on the Crunch moveset on that second one, and now I'm in a very tough spot, as I do have to go for the close combat there to take him out. In comes Talonflame. I do tank this first move just because I know that the second Flame Charge is going to do more than the first. So I load up on energy, fire off a Zap Cannon. If I get an attack drop here, I still have a chance to win this, because I might be able to reach another Zap Cannon before they incinerate me down. But we do not get that attack drop, and because that Talonflame is able to incinerate us down all the way, I do not have a win condition left, so I just let the move go, and my opponent takes that one. GG's. As you can see there, the second 4-1 in back-to-back sets. Primeape very quickly and without a doubt has become one of my favorite Pokemon to use in the Ultra League. Its lightning fast pacing and insane damage output not only makes it fun to use, but a serious threat. Now its moveset of Karate Chop, Night Slash, and Close Combat is the same as Pangoro. And even though Pangoro does have a little bit more bulk and a better typing, I still prefer Primeape for its ability to run Ice Punch, or at least bluff it for shields, its ability to beat other fighters, and as was evident throughout this video, its insane attack stat. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate you. If you enjoyed it, please drop a like, subscribe, and comment down below. Love to hear what you have to say. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one.